Hi, and welcome to Making Sense of Autism. My name is Staci Neustadt. I'm the CEO and a speech language pathologist. I have Susan Golubock, our founder and autistic, now retired occupational therapist. Today, we want to talk about our word for 2025, and that is change. We're excited to dive into this topic today because we feel like it really represents so much of what we're trying to achieve this year. So, change is about shifting perspective. And for us, it really starts with how individuals view autism. We want to move away from seeing autism through a lens of fixing autistics or that deficit based lens to embracing and understanding. So that's one of our pillars is changing that mindset. Our second pillar is understanding those differences, which people often view as behavior. And we're hoping to shift how people view those behaviors as a difference and a lot of times a cry for an unmet need. And then the final pillar is how autistics view themselves. We hope to change that perspective and help autistics view themselves through their strengths and see the unique qualities that they have. So, Sue, let's first dive into what we've been doing a lot, even over the past year, is helping people shift their perspective. So, as an autistic, what do you hope people change with how they view autism?
I think the biggest thing that any autistic individual, like any other human being, we want to feel understood. We want to feel accepted for who we are, not who we could be or you want us to be, but who we actually are. Because that's the foundation for love. If you love someone, you accept them for who they are, not who you want them to be or who you wish they could be. And we want to feel loved, but oftentimes we don't really feel loved um, because people the the assumption is that until we achieve um, the goals that other people have for us to be like everyone else, um, we don't measure up. We're not worthy of that. At least that's how it comes across to a lot of autistics.
Yes. And that's what even as a therapist, I'm sure that we are projecting because if we're using that deficit mindset, we're basically saying, "Hey, we're going to change who you are and work on these things that are hard for you." But as we've shown in the last year through the neuro-strength-based support for autism, it's shifting that view to what are your strengths and how can we build on those versus changing. I love that. So then the second one is a big one, and I love you've helped me shift my mindset of calling behaviors, now calling them differences, and really shifting that view of, it's an unmet need a lot of times when we view that frustration that autistics may present, and so it's on us to make that change. So in talking about those differences or talking about those unmet needs, what do you feel like is maybe the number one thing that individuals can maybe start to shift their mindset and how instead of viewing it as a behavior, viewing it as a need and what they could do?
Well, 99% of all social communication is nonverbal. We rely more on what we perceive the other person is saying through their quote behaviors, their body language, their tone of voice. All of those things communicate And we tend to trust, at least most individuals trust that more than they do the actual words that people say, because people can choose which words they want to say. It's harder to hide the behavior behind it. And that nonverbal communication is expressed differently in autistic individuals. So we are very often misread at our behaviors, our facial expressions, um, the words we choose to use, all of those things are not well understood, or they're interpreted based on um, how you would interpret a neurotypical exhibiting those nonverbal forms of communication. Um, and therefore, we end up being misunderstood, and our needs, which we are expressing as all human beings do, are expressed through not just our words, but our behaviors, how we communicate nonverbally. And there are times when we are under stress that even typical people can't find the words to express what they need or want. They just know, I'm in pain, or I am miserable, I am depressed. I and other people can read their body language oftentimes and guess. But if people aren't reading our body language because it's different, then our needs aren't being recognized and met.
Yes, and that really is a huge change that needs to happen. And I, especially around changing from that compliance mindset. And I think that's where a lot of people seed those differences, is if the environment is about compliance and you need to do this because I say so, they might see that frustration because they don't know how to meet that person's expectations, or they aren't getting the sensory input that they need or the supports that they need in order to do it, or it's completely an unrealistic expectation, which I see
Mhm.
often. So we definitely hope to change the mindset there. And then the third one is for autistic individuals. I know you work with a lot of autistic adults and explore this topic of them understanding themselves. And I know, even as self-identified neurodivergent, when I understood how my brain worked, it was such a relief. And I hear that from a lot of autistic adults that are late diagnosed, is just knowing what was going on is such a relief. And so what do you hope to bring to autistic adults to help them understand themselves this year?
It's a lesson that I have been learning from my fellow autistics, because I grew up thinking I never measured up to other people's expectations. And an autistic, and we're very good at blunt honesty, said, you know what? What other people think of us is none of our business. Um, and if we rely our whole self image on what we think other people are thinking of us, that's not the way to succeed in life. We have to look within ourselves. But since many of our strengths that we recognize as strengths, i.e., um, our love of knowledge and our intense knowledge, are those things that other people look at as, okay, go somewhere else, talk to somebody else about that, but that's not me. Um, so we get negative feedback on what we perceive as our strengths as, well, that's not what most people do. That's not acceptable. Um, then we tend to diminish and not use those strengths. And that's what I want to see change, is the autistic themselves dive into it. And I have seen in one of the clients that we had the whole big turnaround, from basically a depressed, reclusive person who was fearful of the world. And she is out there dancing and enjoying life and having friends, all because she now understands herself. She knows how to advocate for who she is, what she wants, set boundaries, all of those kinds of things, the changes that she's made, because she understands, values, and appreciates herself.
Mm, I love that. And it is such an inspiring story. And we really, I'm so excited for all of these changes for this year because that word change is going to be powerful because it is all to bring that quality of life to all autistics. And so for anyone that is interested in learning more about changing to a neuro-strength-based support for autism, we do have a free 1 hour training that is for parents, professionals, autistic individuals themselves. And it really kind of taps into all these little changes that are these ideas of how we want to start with that change because we know change is hard. Change takes time. And so this 1 hour training is a nice little kind of introduction to where you can start. And so the link will be below. Definitely check that out and stay with us throughout 2025 and see what kinds of changes we continue to put out there and support uh, professionals, parents, and autistic individuals in 2025. Thank you.